So many years ago, when I started working for Tanana Chiefs Conference, it was already by then a well-established organization, fairly large, although it's much larger now. And but one feature of working there was a gentleman also working in the organization above me, various positions of supervising my program and everything. And he was a humble man, and he didn't talk about himself much. But it was only over a long period of time that I sort of caught wind of really what he had accomplished in the years prior to me being there, and so it was kind of an appreciation that I sort of developed over a long period of time. But for Al Ketzler Sr., as a young Native leader, Al Ketzler Sr. was instrumental in the founding of Tanana Chiefs Conference as a tribally based organization, and was involved in the negotiations and discussions leading up to the passage of the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act in 1971, founding of the Alaska Federation of Natives in 1966. Over the years, Al has served TCC in a variety of positions, including serving as TCC's first president from 1962 to 1964, again as president from 1968 to 1972, and from 1976 to 1978, and as TCC's delegate to the Intertribal Timber Council Board from 1998 to 2008. He currently resides in Fairbanks. Please welcome, my extreme pleasure to welcome Al Ketzler Sr.
Put down a little bit so I can see you. Good morning, everyone. As Will said, I'm Al Ketzler Sr., and I was at my first Tanana Chiefs meetings 60 years ago. So I organized them, and I can tell you it's a long time. I just survived my 89th birthday, so I'm with Florence and the other elders here that have been in the trenches with Tanana Chiefs. I will talk to you about, actually on the agenda it said I was going to talk about, what, looking back on what some of the others have done. I kind of changed a little bit. I'm going to talk about how Tanana Chief was organized, what was the effort that went in behind all of that, and down process through the years, and some of it would be my role in what was done with Tanana Chiefs. As we said, in 1962, I met with the Tanana Tribal Council after years of listening to an elder Athabascan named Al Starr talk about his travels through the lower 48 on different reservations and how they were organized and what they had, and his story kind of made me think about what was happening with statehood and what was happening to tribal native lands in the state. So one of the things that started the organization of Tanana Chiefs was I'd met with the Tanana Native Tribal Council about what would we do as a Native group to put out our ownership on the land, and what was the process that we would have to go through. So of course, as all of you folks out there that come up with these new brilliant ideas, they always tell you, that's great, you go do it. So there I was. Trying to figure out how to get something going that would make. So I've been reading about our past, and they had a group called Tanana Chiefs, a group from the interior that had met with the delegate to Congress from Alaska, and they had talked about just wanting to have their land and be free to go anywhere that they wished, and to be recognized as a citizen of Alaska. So what I did is my niece, my brother's daughter, Sharon, she was a super typist, and so we whipped out hundreds of letters, all personal, all individually typed. We didn't have a Xerox machine. All we had was we borrowed an electric typewriter. We typed out letters to every tribal council in the state, every Native organization that we could think of that would maybe help in getting to organize something. And so during that time, I got in touch with the native village of Tanana, where of course, the original group met, and so I called down, and lo and behold, they were holding what they called the Nuchalawoya, which is Indian games and so on. So that they scheduled that for late June 23rd in Tanana. So I changed my dates and wrote letters and asked everybody to come down and meet on, it wasn't land claims then, it was this one ownership, other issues that we needed to look at, hunting rights, land ownership, and education, our health systems, and so on. So we got in touch with them and set up the meeting, and Tanana was overwhelmingly responsive in taking care of all the delegates, setting up a kitchen in the local church there. We had a lady that was a professional cook, or I guess she was. She did a tremendous job. That put out. I need some water here.
Here you go. Oh, I got you. Got you covered there.
I got to tell you, I haven't done this for 20 years, so I retired from. I retired from Tanana Chiefs in 2004, 2002. My boss is over here. Or I missed her, my wife. 44, 45 years. And that was my second round. I had 19, a little over 19 years with the first wife, so. So you can tell I'm a old married guy and all beat up and kind of. So anyway, now I run to that older gentleman's problem here. You give a speech and you stop to think about what you can say next. Then you forget to start up again. So, anyway, in Indiana, I talked about Elstar and talking to him and what other tribes in the lower 48 was doing and how they operated and so on. So it's kind of planted a seed in my mind about, well, you got to get together, tribes together, and man. So I was telling you, I got my niece to type all these letters. Got a hold of Tanana and found out they were having this celebration in June. And so I said, like I said, changed the dates, and we met in Tanana on June 23rd and for 3 days. And they were very, very generous and kind and hosted us quite well. But anyway, the group that got there. I'm sorry. Of course, we're not, of course, like regular Indian tribes that meet all the time and very sophisticated and know what they're doing. We kind of got together and talked about issues that faced the Alaskan Natives at that time, which was, of course, education system. The state had a school system was very, very poor in their doing their job as in educating Native people, and we covered things like hunting rights, subsistence hunting. Of course, that's where Alaska you can do subsistence hunting, and that means you can take a game animal out of season if there's a need for food. So it was like the Barrow Duck incident where an Eskimo in Barrow in 1961 went out and he shot a duck in the springtime when the birds first came in, and the game warden there arrested him. So 2 days later, 138 Eskimos showed up with a duck in hand, saying, "Arrest me." Of course, they said, "Well, take your ducks and go home. Forget about it." And so that's kind of how the subsistence issue came to the forefront in the is what it is today, where we can do subsistence hunting Of course, I'd done a lot of that in my life. When I was 16, I shot, I'm not going to tell you how many moose, but there were game wardens around, so. Or maybe the statute has expired by now, so. But I was kind of the hunter in the village, and I was only 16. Of course. And we'd go out and get a moose and butcher them, bring them in. And we had my father was a German guy. He had big cash out in the back and the sheds and so on. So we'd go hang all the meat in the big sheds and then people would just come and get meat and help themselves. So that worked out really well. But back to how Canada Chiefs was organized, like I said, we wrote letters and called a meeting, went to Tanana, and of course, like I said, they're doing something, so I was elected chair in 62 and 63 and 64, and finally I wore out. Because one of the things that I got the villages to do became very critical in development of the tribal authority and so on down the road. Like I say, we had the, I'm kind of confusing myself here, but sorry, like I say, unaccustomed as I am here, in 62, 63, 64, I got all the villages I sent them all maps of their village and had them mark down what areas that they used for the trapping, hunting, fishing, and I got 23 maps back, along with about 1,000 signatures requesting that the president do something about Alaska Native Land Claims. So I didn't know there was a Department of Interior that handled this kind of stuff. So I sent it off to John Kennedy, who was president at the time. And so, lo and behold, I got a letter back from him saying, well, we sent this off to the Secretary of Interior, Udall, and his department back. But, in 68, there was oil discovered on the North Slope, and they were trying to get a corridor for the pipeline, and in the corridor was Stevens Village. And Stevens Village is one of the villages that had signed this protest against them. So what happened was the Secretary Udall instituted the land freeze based on Stevens Village's protest on the corridor right away. So that there's a big push in helping settle land claims in Alaska, because oil companies have spent a tremendous amount of money in exploration and, of course, doing, bringing their operations in and doing all of their projects. So we had a lot of impetus to help settle the Alaska Native land claims, and that the oil companies would say would help us. The other things that and so this kind of helped bring land claims to fore, and kind of brought it up for amongst the tribes that were instrumental in getting the land claims. It wasn't known as land claims back then. Well, I just see a headline as Alaska Natives file claims on, but 60 million acres, when we originally went in, we only asked for 40 million. So, like I say, there was bills introduced in Congress that allowed for, some of them were 10 million. One was the AFN bill was 40, there was some 60. But actually, because we asked for the 40 million, that became the number. And it was not, it was a little different in the sense that everybody agreed on something, which is very unusual, I think. But I kind of jumped ahead of myself, but I was trying to tell you how we got Tanana Chiefs got started, and we had meetings with the tribal council, and of course got authorization from them to go out and do my thing with letter writing and so on. And so we had Tanana host the first Tanana Chiefs meeting. Really, of course, and we continued to meet there. Well, as I tell you, it's terrible getting old. I can't hardly see these things. Either I got to get stronger glasses or. Like I said, they sent these letters off to President Kennedy, and of course he sent them over to Secretary Udall, and of course they were used as a basis for the land freeze, and which held up the pipeline, which really gave a push to the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act movement. So I was one of the AFN's 5 authorized negotiators for land claims, and so which meant I spent a lot of time in the air between here and DC. That's a long ways, and how many hours? Pan Am used to have a flight from Tokyo, Fairbanks, New York. And so I would catch that Fairbanks, New York section. We'd fly directly to New York and then catch one of the shuttles down to DC. So like I say, I spent a lot of time in the air, meeting with Congress, the senators, and one of the things that we had, of course, a lot of help from other lobbyists, like the labor lobbyists. They tell us, don't go to this guy, he won't vote for you. So we tell him, well, why not? We want to tell him what we're all about, so at least he'll know what he's voting against. And so we contacted every member of Congress in the House and Senate. So it was one of the most complete and thorough lobbying efforts that all those folks in DC said that they'd ever put on. But we would have groups from AFN go down, fly down. We had a law firm where we headquartered all our meetings and scheduled all of the meetings and appointments we had with congressmen and senators. And so, like I say, we had a very, very good very thorough coverage of all of these folks, so they knew what we were all about. And there were some issues. A bill was introduced to give the natives in Alaska 10 million acres, but that was introduced, but it never went anywhere. So that was over. So when I can remember one of the congressmen that introduced the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act into Congress, and that was Congressman Lloyd Means of Washington State. He was one of the big movers in the Congress for the land claims. So Washington is kind of like neighbors from Alaska. Of course, it's a 3.5-hour flight from here today now, and but that was the kind of support that we got for land claims. In 68, 69, when the bill was introduced, it then passed in 1971, which was known as ANELCA, Alaska Native Land Claim Settlement Act. And it passed in, actually just 2 years later, in December of 71, the Land Claims Act passed. Dedicating to the tribes 44 million acres of land and $962.5 million in payment. And I remember a meeting with AFN, and how do we break up all of this land and all of this money that we're going to get. I came up with the idea, well, let's use on the land, let's use a land loss formula, which of course we're a huge area with 235 million acres. So we did really well in the negotiations for land and using that formula. And that was the formula that came from Tanana chiefs, and say, the passage of the act, of course, there was a lot of, during that time I was president of Tanana Chiefs. Of course, immediately after the band deal passed, they held a special election. I got tossed out because as you can tell, I'm not really that good of a communicator. all the smooth talking money guys moved in and said, we're going to do all this for you. My thought and my theory is, I'm going to help you do things for yourself. I'm not going to do everything for you, because you can't. If you can't do it for yourself, why? And so. But the good news was I was elected president again after that in 76. So but anyway, the things that Tanana chiefs had done, like the letters to the secretary, to the president, to the secretary of interior on claiming lands around their villages and having, actual maps, and was the basis for the land freeze of 1968. So that held up the process, held up the pipeline for a couple of years, which gave us time to really refine the efforts that we were doing through the AFN and the tribes. The Tanana chiefs, of course, back then, well, like I say, I can't remember exactly what year it was. I think it was 68, 69, We had no money, of course. AFN, we'd scrabble around, get money and grants, and get things from the state, and to fly to DC and, pay for hotels and meals and so on. So anyway, the group that the core group that with AFN, of course, is a small group. Emil Noddy, who was an Athabascan from downriver. That's what we call it, downriver, or upriver, from the Tanana upriver. So that's how we delineate where we're from. John Borbridge, who's a Tlingit. There's a whole bunch of us, 17 board members that were very active in land claims. And I can remember a few of them. He's good friends like Hank Eaton from Kodiak, Harvey Samuelson from Dedingham, Bristol Bay. We're, the core group for this. Like I say, unaccustomed as I am to this. So, like I say, with the land freeze and all the extra pressure on the oil companies, try to help us get something moving in Congress to pass the legislation that was there. It was really hectic kind of times that we went through. So. So I was trying to think of some I'm sure there were a lot of them, the special incident that, things that happened during land claims. Of course, there was always a group on the other side saying, well, they have no right to the land, you have this. And, those are all the guys that go in and take things and say, it's mine. Well, that's how, I think about the U.S. government and all the folks that, they come in and took land, and then they say it's mine. Well, nobody with, I guess, any sense of justice would say, well, that's not. How do you claim and own this? But didn't know. I guess it's the force of how do you. I'm having difficulty thinking about phrasing who owns the land. Well, we always thought it was. Well, I always thought it was Indians, the people that were born and raised there, belonged to them. You can't go in and say, but Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act was probably a small small token that was passed on to the passed down to the tribes, so they would have, kind of quiet them down. Because my theory was we owned all of it. And that's the Rent Claim Settlement Act was the result of negotiating that portion. So dealing with 44 million acres of title, which has been passed on. It's all titled over to all the regional corporations as of a couple of years ago, I think. So okay, well, I just looked 10 minutes ago. Now, I'm really getting dry. But, back to Tanana when we got to go ahead to try to, do all this. I don't know how many letters I wrote. And I was kind of amazed by the response. And of course, when we all got together in Tanana, how common all of our problems were. Education, hunting rights, health services, all were very big problems across the whole region. And because some of the other issues we had, like Rampart Dam, everybody was saying, oh, they're going to build the Rampart Dam and flood all these villages in Yukon Flats, and it would take, 20 years to fill up create this whole lake. We were in a meeting in Tanana, and I remember this guy, Al Grant. He was a kind of a funny guy, comedian type, and we had the Secretary of State. Back then there was what they called a lieutenant governor. Was talking to him about Rampart Dam, and Al Grant got up and he said, well, I really appreciate, we were talking about schools, and, Al Grant got up and he said, oh, I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for educating my brothers before he drowns them. Because I didn't run too well with the secretary, but it was you should tell him not a joke teller or something. We were a funny storyteller, but I got a big kick out of that one because it really put the Secretary of State really got him upset about what the state was going to do. So, of course, when oil was discovered, it put a totally different picture on what the land claim was. What their focus would be by the feds, and of course even like I say, on the I got a ring in my ear. I'm not sure what the, okay. Okay, now I'm in that in that senior moment here. I kind of forgot where I was. Oh, the boss is saving me. My time's up. So, anyway, I kind of forgot how difficult it was for public speaking, and what's your trick? Well, it used to, when I did this before, I would kind of focus on one person out there, like we're an individual conversation, just talking to one person. And that helped. I forgot that, so. Again, I'm getting this echo back in my ear. So anyway, I'll be around for a little bit, and if you have individual questions about what happened and how we organized and all these other things that Tanana chiefs did in the land claims, and the Tanana chiefs is a very big mover. Lots of the good ideas came out of Tanana chiefs. Of course, in the brag, that was me. But like the biggest one, of course, is the land loss formula, where who lost the most, got the most from the land, and that was for land that wasn't. The money was not very consequent, not a huge amount, so that went per capita. I think I got a check for $100 and some. That was kind of my pay for 9 years of zooming around the country, telling people about land claims. But anyway, I appreciate your attention. I hope you learned something. If you haven't, come talk to me. I'm a better communicator individually, so thank you very much.